Emma Martinez stood before the crystalline viewport of the orbital station, her reflection merging with the stars beyond. The Galactic Council chamber loomed behind her, its architecture designed to intimidate soaring columns of bioluminescent material that pulsed with the collective thoughts of 1,000 species. She could feel their eyes upon her, some with 3 pupils, others with compound lenses, all filled with the same condescending pity. The human delegation wishes to speak. The voice of Counselor Vexler rumbled through the translation matrix, his 6-limbed form casting shadows across the marble floor. How quaint? Emma turned slowly, deliberately. Her uniform bore the insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps, but beneath the formal exterior, she carried scars from conflicts these beings had only read about in their sterile databases. Edward Chun, her military attaché, stood rigid at attention beside the human delegation's platform, his jaw tight with barely contained frustration. "Counselor," Emma began, her voice steady despite the weight of 23 alien species' attention pressing down upon her. "Earth respectfully requests reconsideration of our planetary defense proposals. The Krethian swarm has breached the outer colonies of 3 neighboring systems. Our projections show projections based on fear," interrupted Counselor Schley, her ethereal form shimmering with dismissive colors. "Humans are a young species, Ambassador Martinez. You have known war for your entire history. It is understandable that you see threats where none exist." Edward's fist clenched at his side. Emma raised a subtle hand, staying his protest. "With respect, Counselor, our experience with conflict is precisely why our warnings should carry weight." A ripple of what might have been laughter echoed through the chamber's acoustic field. Vexler leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in what the translation software rendered as amusement. "Humanity fears war because humanity cannot transcend it," he said. "For 7,000 cycles, the Galactic Council has maintained peace through diplomatic protocol and economic interdependence. We have evolved beyond your primitive aggression. The Krethians are a minor border dispute, nothing more. They will be reasoned with." Emma felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She had been a combat pilot before joining the diplomatic service. She had seen what minor disputes looked like when they escalated, colonies reduced to ash, children's toys floating in the vacuum of shattered habitats. "Then you refuse our offer of military consultation?" she asked quietly. "We have no need of your weapons, Ambassador," Schley replied, her tone gentle with false sympathy. "Perhaps in time your species will learn that strength lies not in violence but in understanding." The session concluded with the formal dismissal protocols. As the human delegation filed out, Emma caught Edward's eye. He had served 20 years in the Colonial Marines before being assigned to her security detail. He understood what she understood: the Council's arrogance would cost lives. How long? Edward murmured as they walked the corridors back to their quarters. 3 weeks, Emma replied. Maybe less. It took 12 days. The emergency beacon screamed across hyperspace channels with the terror of the dying. The Krethian swarm had not been a minor dispute. They had been a reconnaissance force, testing defenses, measuring response times. The main fleet numbered in the hundreds of thousands organic ships that bred and multiplied, consuming everything in their path. 4 council worlds fell in the first 72 hours. Emma stood in the same chamber, but now it was chaos. Counselors screamed in languages the translation matrix struggled to parse. Vexler-S carapace had lost its shine, fear leaking from his pheromone glands. Schley's luminous form flickered erratically, her species' collected calm shattered. "This is impossible," Vexler roared. "They accepted our diplomatic overture? They agreed to negotiations." "They lied," Emma said simply, her voice cutting through the pandemonium like a blade. "Because they understood what you refused to see, that sometimes peace is not an option your enemy offers." Schley turned to her, and for the first time Emma saw genuine desperation in those alien eyes. "What do we do?" Edward stepped forward, his bearing that of a soldier who had seen hell and walked back out. "You call the species you mocked for understanding war," he said. You call humanity. The Council's pride shattered like glass. Within hours, the call went out. Earth's Third Fleet, held in reserve despite the Council's protests, began emergency deployment. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, took command of the United Defense. Human tacticians, considered barbarians by Council standards, now directed the defensive formations of a dozen species, who had never fired a weapon in anger. Emma coordinated from the Orbital Command Center. Her diplomatic skills now bent toward the harder task of keeping terrified alien governments from complete collapse. Edward led the ground forces training programs, teaching species who had never held rifles how to defend their homes. The battle for the Tertian system became legend. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than the Council's pleasure cruises masquerading as defense vessels, struck at the swarm with tactical precision earned through generations of brutal experience. Marines who had trained in Earth's harshest environments taught alien soldiers that survival required more than technology. It required will. Emma watched the tactical displays, her heart heavy with every casualty report. This was the reality her people had tried to prevent. But as she saw Council species fighting alongside human forces, learning to channel their terror into determined resistance, she recognized something else emerging. Understanding. The swarm broke at Tertian. The combined fleet, guided by human strategic doctrine and fueled by the Council's industrial capacity, turned the tide. It would take months to fully drive them back, but the existential threat had been contained. In the aftermath, Emma stood once more before the Council. But now, Councillor Vexler approached her not with condescension, but with something approaching humility. "We were fools," he said quietly. "We mistook inexperience with violence for wisdom. We confused our fortune with superiority." Emma nodded slowly. "Humanity doesn't fear war, Counselor. We understand it. There's a difference. We know its cost in blood and nightmares. We know that sometimes the only path to peace is through the fire." Schleier's form pulsed with subdued colors. "What now, Ambassador?" "Now," Emma replied, glancing at Edward, who stood ready as always. "We teach you what we hoped you'd never need to know. Not because we glory in it, but because the universe sometimes demands that good beings be willing to fight." The Galactic Council's archives would record this as the day humanity's wisdom was finally recognized. But Emma knew the truth was simpler and harder. They had learned that peace without the will to defend it was merely waiting to be conquered, and that sometimes the species who truly understood war were the ones most desperate to avoid it.